Welcome back to the OCDiaries.
I can't believe it.
It's day 4,273 of quarantine. That's right, in case you forgot, there's still no vaccine for COVID-19. And what have we been doing to keep ourselves occupied, you may ask?
Well, I've been embroidering vulvas.
And I've posted 12 TikToks since we started talking.
But also, as white women living in America, we've been educating ourselves on and doing what we can to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Today, we want to focus on why protesting is important and what the experience has been like for activists during this ridiculous, anxious time.
We are so very excited to introduce Comrade Cameron.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if it's a intro.
Comrade Cameron, everyone.
Comrade Cameron, thank you.
You went to a protest a few weeks ago in Yonkers, right? Or a couple.
Yeah. Ooh, it was a juicy march, guys. From where when I came in, there were speeches going on. There were people who were like informing folks, like, these are the issues we are marching for. You know, we want to look at these concepts, and, you know, there's a huge sign that says defund the police right in front. So, this is the conversation that we're having. And I was like, this is so great. You know, like, I feel that these folks are, like, there are some revolutionaries in here, and that's wonderful. But you also had some folks who were really there for like photo ops, and who were there to be like, oh, look at me, I'm marching, like when I saw a little boy wearing a police officer's uniform, I was like, what's happening right now? Like, this is like, I'm seeing one sign that says defund the police, and I'm seeing so I'm seeing already, like, from when I get there, a huge divide in the conversation. And Yonkers is very special in terms of the racial divide because of what folks have been allowed to believe about the Black people who live in Yonkers. When you have a city that was subpoenaed to desegregate its housing and schools in 1980 by the United States government, by 2020, it's not like you're going to have a racial utopia. This is after every other city in the country. Yonkers was the last city to desegregate. So we have people with these ideals that, like, the presence of Black people in my neighborhood lowers the property value, so I don't want them here. We have on, like, color video of protests against Black people moving into white neighborhoods in Yonkers. There are a lot of people from Yonkers who do not know that. So when I'm talking, like, just when I'm talking about people who are just not getting it, like, I mean, they just haven't been getting it. Like, they don't know. They're like, oh, we can all just come together, guys. Why are we fighting? What's going on? Like, it's like, where have you been, Tim? Like, where have you been, like, this whole time? Because, like, this has been a problem the entire time. These segregated schools have been the problem. The segregation in the housing, the redlining, and the breaking up of our districts in, like, the most crazy ways, the gerrymandering that happens when it's time to vote. That's what we're talking about. As the march continues, we're going down the streets, and, like, I'm seeing people, like, try to, like sowing seeds of, like, discord, and, like, people who are, like, going up to the police and, like, giving them high fives and, like, all this stuff. And I'm like, are you aware of what we're marching for? Is that at all clear? I'm just noticing a lot of folks who were either, like, who are not at the march because they're like, well, I don't want to defund the police. I don't want to abolish the police. My dad's a police officer. I love my dad and I love the police. Yay, cops. Like, you have those folks who would never show up to this march. And then you have people who are like, well, like, I'm really sad about George Floyd, so I showed up. But like, if that $20 bill was fake, he probably stole food. So for $20, this man maybe deserved to die because it was not a real $20 bill. The things that people are thinking about, like, this movement, it's not uniform. It's how you have these, these twisted minds where it's like, I'm not white and I'm not in power, but I will achieve and aspire toward a proximity to whiteness and a proximity to power, and I will reach out for it constantly. By acquiescing to those requests and submitting to whiteness constantly, and submitting to the powers that be constantly, and policing everyone around me and making sure, you better stay in place. No, don't you dare, buck against the system, because, like, we're never gonna, They're never going to listen to us now. Like, even though they're not listening to us right now, like they're not already not listening. So they think they're doing, this great work because there are folks who are against what they're doing. And then you have folks who are doing this terrifying acts of bravery, like these brave people who are talking about real revolutionary change at these protests clashing. When we got to the 3rd precinct, we looked up and there were officers with rifles. They were on the roof of the building across the street in riot gear, because I guess they were afraid we were going to storm the precinct or something. I don't know. But just the fear of looking up and seeing, 2 white police officers with guns, like ready, at the ready, like, and sunglasses on, like, you're not even looking, you're shooting. You're not looking. If something goes off, you're shooting. That's it. Everyone stopped, looked up, and we started chanting, hands up, don't shoot. And the police officer the officers started backing up away so that they couldn't be seen anymore. And a lot of people were like, woo, yeah, like, we scared them. I'm like, let's not forget they have guns, people. But just that moment was like terrifying for a lot of folks. And it's infuriating, because it's so the most tone deaf thing you can do at this particular march, which was so like totally meant to be so peaceful. Like, everyone was like, oh, like, this is going to be a peaceful march. I don't want to hear nobody talking about burning shit or nothing. Like, it's going to be a peaceful march. To have the response be snipers on the roof, and when people decide to do their own thing in the protest, like some people did a kneeling protest, some people went off and they marched to do like a kneeling protest. Those people got harassed by the police, and my dad was marching with me, and he was getting really tired, so I was trying to walk him back to the car. And when I saw those people getting harassed, I was just like, what are we doing? Like, what are we even doing? It was nothing like any march I'd ever been to before. I got to march with my dad. My father told me that morning that he was going to the march, that my father is an immigrant. My dad is a permanent resident here, and he can't vote. This is how my dad can vote. This is the only civic responsibility or civic right my dad can really do. And he's, in his 60s now. And he's like, I'm going to march. I'm going to go to the march. I'm like, Dad, you don't have to do it. But watching him march as a man who cannot participate in most other things, most other, forms of government, this is how people have to use their voice. So when I see people who are just like, protesting doesn't work, blah, 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 that's part of your civic duty too. Like, that's part of your civic rights, is to go and out and march for your rights. It's not about making noise. It's not about disrupting your garden party, Martha. It's about getting equity for the people. It's about changing some of breaking down the system. Honestly, I was gonna say changing the law, but like, fuck that. Like, we're way past all of that. Like, it's unfortunate that people are still talking about like, well, how can we, like, let's paint Black Lives Matter on the street. That does nothing for me. Like, nothing. Like, thank you, it's pretty. Can we talk about equity, please? Can we talk about abolishing the police? Can we talk about the roots of the police system, which has its roots in the United States in slave catching and in the KKK? This is all written down, folks. This is all written down. You've just democratized slave catching, essentially, and now you have debt slavery and so on, that we've learned, from really reading the 13th Amendment and understanding that we're putting people in jail so that they can give us free labor and cheap labor for literally nothing. And then they leave jail and they can't even get a real job. So like, these are the problems we're talking about. I'm not concerned about the fact that the street is not named Martin Luther King Boulevard and why all the streets are not named Martin Luther King Boulevard. Like, that's not what we're marching and talking about. And to give me that in response to what I'm asking for is a huge slap in the face. It's so disrespectful. It has, nothing, and like, no shade to the people who spent their time painting all of that, because I know it was a lot of time and a lot of paint. But dude, chill, cool it, because nobody needs that. People are like, yo, what are you talking about? You're scaring me. Like, because it's terrifying to think that like the world you live in has been so inequitable for so long that now we have to change your entire way of living to even start the conversation about equity.
What has it been like as an anxious person to be entering a protest, entering a very crowded space when you know that there's a big health risk right now?
Guys, I'm telling you, I was sweating so much. And yes, it was hot as hell. But the anxiety, it was anxiety sweat. It was like butt clenched, like this is probably not safe. I don't know, like, you know, and I'm wearing a medical grade mask. And I was still walking into this crowd of people with like fear, like so much trepidation. Now, I mean, but I had been protesting before. So it wasn't really the protest fear that I had the first time I protested. I definitely had fears the first time I protested because I was thinking that like, you know, I'm not here to be violent, but what if someone is? Like, someone could be here to be violent, you know? And that was only fueled by, you know, that guy over there who's swinging a Confederate flag in New York City. That was only exacerbated by the police who all have their hands on their guns right now, who are like staring at me, you know? It wasn't the people around me, because again, like, there is this feeling of unity, even if people aren't like necessarily on the same page philosophically. Like, you kind of feel like, you know, really good screaming no justice, no peace, while the other person next to you is also screaming no justice, no peace. It took a while for me to be comfortable in that space, but I eventually got comfortable because I was excited that revolution was, you know, calling, and I could feel that pull, and it was more important than any fears that I had at the moment. And even as I got home, I was like, what the hell did I just do? Like, where, you know, like, oh my God, I just went to like my first protest, and even after my second protest or my third, like, whoo, I was, you know, I made it out, I'm alive, you know, thank God. This one, because of COVID, terrifying, completely different. Like, there's this like kind of like, you kind of go into the crowd like this, like, okay, no justice, no peace. Like, no racist police. like you want to be there like in spirit, but you're also just like, oh my God, please stop breathing on me. Like, but you know, seeing other people with masks on, seeing people give out masks, you know, those are things that's happening at these protests. People are caring about each other. People are looking out for each other. You know, when I felt like the nerves of like, oh my God, I'm marching during COVID, a thing that I said I was not gonna do. I was like, probably won't go to any marches. And then I was like, there's a march tomorrow. I want to go to the march, but I shouldn't, probably because of COVID. And then hearing my dad say he was going to go to the march, that's what did it. That's what was like, I'm going.
Apparently in the 1918 flu epidemic, it was very different, like, because the government, you know, was different than it is now. And, you know, they would put out PSAs, you know, were saying like, be patriotic, wear your mask. Like, it was built up as like, if you love your country, you'll wear your mask. Like, the opposite of what our president now is saying.
It's crazy. He's literally, it's quite literally the opposite. Straight up thinks that if you wear a mask, it's like a partisan like thing. That's the crazy part for me too. I'm just shocked by the acquiescence to that ignorance. Like the idea that you would be like, yeah, wearing a mask is anti-American because I can't you know, like, it itches my nose. The other day I got on the bus because I had to like, out of pure necessity. I had to get on the bus, and I was there, I had my mask on, I was sitting far away from people. I actually moved my seat so that this grandmother, I think, and her grandchild could sit together so they wouldn't be bothered and sat next to by anyone else. And almost immediately, these like young dudes get on the bus, no one's got a mask on. And I'm like I went full like mother mode. I was like, nope, none of y'all got a mask on. No. And Like, I stood up and I was like, I marched myself to the front of the bus, and then I was like, wait a second. I turned around and I had one bandana. This was a group of young men. I had one bandana. I was like, I don't know which one of y'all is going to be able to use this, but one of you take this. It's clean. Put something on your face. This is serious. It has nothing to do with politics. Nothing at all to do with politics. You know, it has everything to do with keeping myself and the people I live with safe and healthy. It has everything to do with wanting to see those people again. So I stay inside of my house until I can see them again. It has, you know, everything to do with me staying alive, with my own health and wellness. And someone tweeted the other day, I think we should have told people to wear masks for themselves and not for other people.
Some people are like, well, that's my right to die. I love that you are the kind of person who, instead of, you know, leaving the bus or, you know, grumbling behind their backs, like, oh my God, why aren't they wearing a mask? You went up to them and you gave them a mask. You saved their lives, even though, you know, you were angry at them and had every right to be. I
wanted them for that mask. My job in that moment wasn't to yell at them. I'm not their mom, but like, I really wanted to yell. And I kind of did at first. But I turned around and I was like, wait a second, you know, like, maybe they don't have access to like a medical mask. Like, I gave them, I had the bandana for that reason too, because people need to know, like, you can wear any cloth. You can put a t-shirt on your face and go with the confidence, or go knowing that, like, you are doing something, your part, to stop the spread of this disease. When I think about how people just don't want to do their part just to stop spreading this disease, does it discourage me when I think about how people don't want to read to destroy racism? Yes. Like, when I think about how people don't want to hold themselves accountable to, you know, dismantle and disrupt sexism and misogyny and just all of the things that come with that, including, like, you know, sexual harassment and, you know, ending those things, stopping those things, is not about, like, one, you know, woman or one Black person yelling in the street. Like, you know, it's not about that. It is about that person, of course. But it's about all of us doing our part to make this a better world for all of us, to make this situation more sustainable and more equitable for everyone.
These people who are protesting the masks and the lockdown laws, they're not protesting their right to, like, go back to work or the freedom to work. They're protesting because they want to get their hair cut, they want to go to a restaurant. They're basically saying, like, I want lower income people to do the labor for me. That's what they're protesting. They're protesting saying, I want other people to be able to put themselves at risk again to serve me. Like
essentially, that's.
And I hadn't really thought of it that way.
It's so true. Because it's like, you, like, of all the people, like, who were posting, like, how to cut your own damn hair, how to make your own damn nails, you know, like, how, you know, to work out at home. Someone the other day was just like, oh my God, LA opened up everything but the gyms. And I'm like, why are you trying to leave your house? Why are you leaving? The fear is learning to do these things yourself. Yes. The fear is, like, if I do this myself, I'm admitting that the labor, like, other people doing labor for me is not necessary. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
And I'm admitting that, like, maybe the work that I am involved in, like, the way I make my money, maybe that's underwater basket weaving, and maybe that's stupid. And you can probably turn your thing you do into something that helps others, into a platform that empowers other people. But, you know, the status quo has been so good to you, and you have no intention of changing that. Like, if I can have freedom and you can't, maybe that means I have more freedom than you. And me having more freedom than you is just something that keeps me, you know, going during the day and helps me sleep at night. That's terrifying. Like, I can't say there was a time in my life, I think, where like that was the case. Even when I was very conservative, for instance, or, you know, and had, like, really, like, these traditional values, that's what they call them, right? I even then, as a Black female presenting person, I didn't have, it's not like I had privilege that, necessarily, and I do have some privileges. I'm not saying I don't have privilege, but it's not like I had privilege on the level of like whiteness, for instance, or, or masculinity or maleness, I guess. Those privileges would never be afforded to me at the time. And like, which was being reinforced in the Black community was like, your submission to those privileges, to other people having those privilege, will keep you alive. It will keep you, it will sustain you, it will bring you into room. So just don't talk about your struggles. Like, it's, no one cares. You work with the cards you were dealt. But it's like, it seems more like you have all the cards and I have a box, like a card box. Mm-hmm. I'm not playing with, I don't have anything really going on over here. That can be so debilitating, looking around and being like, wow, like this, just being in this body makes everything much harder. Like, it just exacerbates all of those other issues. Like, if I have a personal class issue, it gets, it's heightened by the color of my skin and my feminine presentation. And it sucks. It really does suck, that feeling of like where it's like, I don't have a face. It's just like this black, figure, and it's treated differently, spoken to differently. I'm addressed in a different light, and that can get exhausting, especially when you're actually noticing it. It's easy not to notice it when you are trying so hard to be so acceptable and it's being received well, but it didn't make me any less anxious. For instance, it didn't make me any less depressed when depression would start to creep in. Along with those other things I was saying, it exacerbates, like, the economic side. It exacerbates the mental health issues that, it's like, I may have been, I could have been maybe like born with a level of anxiety. I don't know if I was, but it was definitely exacerbated by my race and I guess my gender presentation then and now.